The implications of Washington's attack on the Chinese company Huawei became clear to millions of people around the world this week. Google parent Alphabet said it would suspend business with the world's second largest smartphone maker, which the US blacklisted last week.
I use Gmail and another application a lot, so it scares me that I won't be able to use them in a few months.
Imagine if you just bought a new Huawei phone, it would be so difficult, and the phone is not that cheap.
But there's good news for Huawei and its customers. The US has loosened restrictions it imposed on the company. Huawei will be allowed to buy American products and software for existing projects. Huawei is known for its smartphones, but it's also the world's leading telecoms equipment provider. The company is still banned from buying US technology without licenses, which will likely be denied. Washington says the reprieve aims to give US firms that rely on Huawei time to find new partners. Sanctions on the company will be back in full force in August. Huawei says it remains optimistic despite the ban.
Our most advanced products will not be affected. Our 5G technology won't be affected. And after 2 or 3 years, no one will be able to catch up with it.
President Donald Trump's administration is getting pushback from outside the tech sector for its hardline stance on China. Adidas, Nike, and Under Armour have asked the White House to spare footwear from tariffs that would raise price tags across the US. And China has signaled it could ban exports of rare earth minerals. US firms rely on those imports for a wide range of products, from computers to fighter jets. And China controls around 80% of the world's supply. Analysts say that could be China's trump card. Paolo Montecillo, TRT World.
And for more on this standoff, let's go to Martin Jacques in London. He's a senior fellow at the Department of Politics and International Studies at Cambridge University. And he's also the author of When China Rules the World. Good to have you back on Money Talks, Martin. So it looks like the Trump administration has acknowledged the pain that would be inflicted on US companies because of Donald Trump's Huawei ban. Do you think this temporary reprieve might turn into a permanent one?
Well, who knows? I don't think so. I think the way the Trump is behaving at the moment, he intends for this to come in. I think he seriously underestimated the impact on American firms, particularly the tech giants. It's already had quite an effect on share prices and so on. And you know, the repercussions of these proposals are bound to impact on, for example, the performance of Apple in the Chinese market. I mean, I think in general, the weakness of the Trump position is that he's underestimating actually what China can do.
That's right. Now, the Trump administration's campaign against Huawei, as we know, centres on this claim that the company is a national security threat. It could be used by Beijing to spy. But to what extent do you think do these moves against Huawei have to do with the company's rising commercial success globally? We know it's now the world's #2 smartphone maker, having overtaken Apple. Do you think that's got anything to do with it?
I think actually this is the nub of the matter. I mean, I think the security talk is actually cover for really what is an anti-competitive move against the Huawei, because Huawei is, you know, a tremendous competitor. I mean, you know, its smartphones are regarded now as the best in the world, and of course, in terms of 5G, really, I mean, the only peers it's got, but they're much weaker, are Nokia and Ericsson. And there isn't a single American player in this field. So actually, you know, I think the security, I'm not saying there's no security problem, but I think this is cover for something quite different, which is essentially that the rise of the Chinese tech companies are giving America a real run for their money.
Yes, and as we heard in Paolo's story, the sportswear giants Nike, Adidas joined around 170 other footwear companies calling Trump's trade war with China catastrophic. Do you think perhaps the prospect of higher priced sneakers for the American consumer. Could that be what changes Donald Trump's mind?
Well, I think that in general, Trump is underestimating the impact on the American consumer. I mean, I was reading a report this morning which suggested that the cost to American consumers in the short run is around about $500 a head, which is roughly what the tax cuts have delivered, and it's expected to be over $2,000 a head. So, the idea that China's going to bear all the pain because the trade deficit runs against the United States and not against China is, well, Trump's always been very simplistic about the trading relationship. He sees it as a kind of one or two dimensional factor, when in fact we all know that it's a three-dimensional factor, because it's not just your bilateral relationship that matters, it's your multilateral relationships that matter. And at the end of the day, what really matters is whether you've got an overall trade deficit rather than just with one country.
And recently, the Chinese President Xi Jinping visited a rare earths minerals plant in China, and that was being seen as a thinly veiled threat towards the United States, a threat that perhaps Beijing could cut off supply of the crucial component to many electronics, including smartphones, to the United States. Do you think China would ever pull that trigger?
Well, ever is a long time, potentially. I think that the Chinese are reluctant to be the pacemaker in all this. If you reflect on what's happened so far, it's always been the Americans that have made the first move, and the Chinese have responded, or sometimes they haven't responded. So I think the Chinese don't want to give the Americans an excuse, and there are plenty of people in the administration who would love an excuse to take much wider action, because they're constantly sort of raising the ante in all this. And I don't think the Chinese want to worsen the situation, exacerbate the situation. I think they would like to do some kind of equitable deal, but it has to be equitable. And at the moment, it's not. So the Chinese are going to continue, usually, to respond. But to really raise the ante, like on the rare earth metals and so on,
yes.
I think they'll be very reluctant to do that. I'm not saying they will never do it. That's too strong a statement. But they don't want to do it as things stand at the moment, as far as I can see.
Okay, Martin Jacques, always good to get your thoughts. Thanks again for joining us on Money Talks.